Story 1, AITA for refusing to sit next to a picture of my late husband and telling my daughter I will not be going to her wedding if that is her plan. My late husband and I didn't have a good relationship. He struggled with alcoholism and ultimately drank himself to death after I divorced him. After some time, I remarried, but my daughter doesn't get along with my new husband. They have a strained relationship, and I married him while she was in college. She has hated that I have remarried and is kinda a dick to my husband. My daughter is getting married soon, and while I'm excited for her, I've had some concerns about how she's planning the wedding. She mentioned wanting to include a picture of my late husband at the ceremony, which I completely understand is a way to honor him. However, she also wants me to sit next to his picture during the ceremony and my husband would sit elsewhere. I told her that I'm not comfortable with that arrangement. I also learned she wanted me to sit with a picture at the family table and my husband wouldn't be sitting there either. I told her no. She got upset and said I was being selfish and disrespectful to her and her father's memory. I told her that if that's her plan, I won't be able to attend the wedding. She called me a jerk and now family is involved. Mango_bingo says, honestly, since you divorced before he passed, he's not even your late husband, he's your ex-husband. She can honor his memory all day long, but it would be ridiculous to sit you next to your ex instead of your spouse even if your ex was still alive. I could see a modest compromise of sitting next to the picture and your spouse during the ceremony if you feel comfortable with that, but eating dinner with a picture of your ex instead of your actual spouse is absurd. NTA Incan Ivy says, info to clarify, she wants you to sit alone with a photograph rather than with your husband? I feel like I must be missing something, because that's absurd. Hanikalai says, NTA. It's 100 fair enough that she feels inclined to honor her father at her wedding, but there's definitely a limit to what it's reasonable of her to expect from you in regards to it. Particularly expecting your husband to sit elsewhere while she seats you next to your ex-husband's photo. Yikes. You set a perfectly reasonable boundary, and the fact that she doesn't like the choice in front of her is her problem, and the fact that she's completely unbothered by your explicit discomfort with her plans makes her the selfish and disrespectful one in this scenario. Story 2, AITA for giving my daughter's things back that were taken away as punishment? I'm 31 and my husband is 30. Our daughter is 7, and she found a puppy in the front yard and played with it. Turns out it belonged to our neighbors, who were looking for it. They accused her of stealing it, and my husband gave her extra chores. She refused to do them, saying she didn't steal the puppy. The neighbors came to apologize a bit later, as their son confessed to losing the puppy on a walk when he took its leash off. That's how it ended up on our yard. I came home that evening and my husband explained this. He said she should be disciplined for not doing the chores. I said she was right to not accept unearned punishment. He said it's the principle, and she should listen to her father. I said I would rather die than teach her that she should lay down and accept mistreatment. We argued and he called me unreasonable. AITA? Antibo says, I got into it with my husband one time years ago. My oldest son, from first marriage, was maybe 12 at the time. Making a box of mac and cheese for lunch for himself and little brother. When it came time to put in the butter, he did exactly what he'd seen me do dozens of times. Slice it up so it melts faster before pouring in cold milk. For some reason, husband took issue with him cutting up this little quarter stick of butter. Told him to just drop it in and stir it up and it will melt just fine. My son finished slicing it up while hubby got more irritated. I stepped in trying to explain he's just doing it how he's seen me do it, and trying to figure out why the hell it was such a big deal, like am I missing something that's wrong about slicing butter? Turned out that husband got mad because my son didn't immediately do what he said. We had a really long discussion about that kind of attitude. Fortunately he learned his lesson on what is important to make an issue out of and what isn't. And slicing butter is not a major issue. Froggy says, Duh. Your husband needs to grow the F up. Part of being a person, especially an adult, is knowing when to admit you made a mistake and apologizing for it. It doesn't matter if it's to a child or another adult. He is being unreasonable. It's one thing to consider the words of a stranger and then listen to your child. People will lie, or misunderstand, that goes for kids and adults. Why would your husband believe your child was capable of stealing someone's pet? That's a pretty clear I know my kid didn't do this type of thing. And usually rephrasing a question or explaining things gets a kid that young to admit what they did even if inadvertently. The biggest takeaway here is that strangers came back to apologize for their accusation, but dad can't manage to apologize to his own child not only for not believing her, but levying a punishment with zero facts. No one should blindly listen to an adult when the adult is wrong. That sets a terrible precedent of a child not knowing when it's safe to refuse anything from unwanted contact from a family member or being forced to do something they know is wrong. Maybe it's me. 0617 says, NTA your husband is trying to instill blind obedience. Your daughter obviously has strong critical thinking skills. Unfortunately, this will likely continue because a lot of parents want obedient children more than children that can think for themselves. Thanks for watching. I love you. Follow Reddit Echoes for more.